All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Leaders with Visions Public Policy Luncheon. This month we are taking on Common Core, something that is going on in our state. There is a lot of confusion about what does it mean, what is it good for the kids, should we be using it broadly or in a limited experimental state. We are pleased to present people from both the proponents and opponents so that you can make an informed decision. But before we start with the panel, I want to take a moment to introduce a renowned author and the former secretary, she's right there, the former secretary of the Department of Environmental Quality, Miss Martha Madden. Would you please stand, Martha, and give us a few words?
You're a true leader. We appreciate you. Let's give her a hand. As Jean has mentioned, I have quite a few various careers in my past and now. And moving forward, I am an author and a lecturer. I have been a dean, a professor. I've been at Tulane University Medical School in the environmental area. I used to go around the world as Dean of Stevens on semester at sea with 500 students around the world, been in 70 countries, over 5 million miles around the world, and have enjoyed very much all the opportunities I've had. But most of all, I'm a Louisianian, as many of you, and we love the state. We love the people. We got problems. We got problems. But thanks to people like you all and to Jean and our helpers, we're trying to do something about it. So keep up that good work. I've just written a book and it's in the press now called Subtle Expertise. You say, well, that's a funny name. It means simply soft skills. Every day people are telling me, Martha, the young people today and the people out of college and everything, they know all of the hard skills. They know about the chemical parts and the engineering parts and the biostats. It's these soft skills, dealing with people, working ethic, team players. That's what the book's about. And I'm hopeful that you will have a chance to read it once we finally get it out of the brother's hands. And it's a pleasure for me to be here with you today and to say hello. And on behalf of the state of Louisiana and for the state of Louisiana, let's keep trying, even though it gets a little dicey, as you know what I mean, from time to time. Keep trying. And thanks to leaders like Jean and the vision that the organization has, we can do some things. Thank you.
Thank you. And now it's going to be a surprise to the person I'm going to call upon, but she spent the night at my house last night, and this morning she said something so incredible from when she gives her speeches. I would like for Linda Talbot from Shreveport, and our newest member. By the way, Martha's a member of Leaders with Vision, so if you're not a member, come on in. Linda, would you rise and share with them what you told me this morning about looking behind you? Please. You're a natural-born speaker. Stand up, please.
About when I give speeches all over the United States, I always tell them there's no one walking behind us. But if you'll look behind you, there isn't anybody walking behind us anymore, and we've got to recruit young people. We've got to recruit young people. But I know they're working and all like that, but we started out as grassroots. And I know I started out 40 years ago, and it was hard then, but we had volunteers that loved the county, that loved everything about everything. And now there is nobody walking behind us. And it's time for some of us to pass the torch. And we're ready to pass the torch. And I told somebody in the church the other day, there's nobody to pass the torch to. So we've got to get the young people involved like and I don't know how we just volunteered, and it was so simple years ago, but it's not simple anymore. But it's time for some of us to step aside, pass the torch, but just walking behind.
Absolutely. Share the vision. And we ask you all to share the vision also. Thank you, Linda. That is so important because I've been trying to pass that torch for about 19 years now. And I still keep looking for that person that is, because it takes commitment. In fact, as we are establishing the bylaws and everything else, we were just debating the question of whether it should be 2 or 3 year terms. And there's a sentiment that it should be 3 year terms because any volunteer that would commit to 3 years knows that it's more than a title. So come on in. We're going to hold the founding membership open until 12/12 of 14. And we certainly invite you to join us so we can continue doing these kind of programs to educate the public. Today we have met with the presenters, and they have decided on the lineups. And the first person, the opponent, okay, is Lee Barrios. You have the sheets before you. Lee, would you please come up and give us your thoughts on Common Core?
Try it, Lee.
Hello, hello. It's not working.
Not loud enough. Something else.
I could speak louder, but it won't record very well. No.
Where's John? There it is.
You got one.
It's kind of coming and going.
Same.
Is this one better?
Yes.
Hello, hello. I think it's working. I just have to get close.
Plan B.
Okay. I'm so glad to be here today. I'm sort of preaching to the choir, educators, and a good number of parents who are well informed and sort of know their position. I hope today that I'll have a little bit of a different audience and we'll have some good questions that come out of this. Common Core is supposed to be a well-written, developmentally appropriate, challenging set of identifiers as to what a child should know and be able to do at each grade level. But it's not. I'm going to identify just 10 serious errors in the Common Core concept, but then I'm going to return to what, to me, is the fatal flaw of the high-stakes standardized testing component, the centerpiece of the failed policies of the federal government's No Child Left Behind. Error number 1, the process by which the Common Core standards were developed and adopted was undemocratic. A confidential process that involved 27 people on 2 work groups included a significant number from the testing industry. Only 1 classroom teacher was involved, Dr. James Milgram, who was on the committee to review the math standards after they were presented. If you Google his name, you'll find his letter to the committee where he declined to approve the final product. The process for adopting the Common Core was speedy and expedient. All that was needed were 2 signatures. In Louisiana, those were Superintendent Paul Pastrick and Governor Jindal. They signed off early in 2010 before the standards were even completed in June of 2010. The Federal Department of Ed is prevented by law from enacting or promoting national standards. So the Bill Gates Foundation so far has paid $191 million to develop and promote the Common Core. $158 million spent to buy active support for the standards from myriad organizations like the PTA and the National Catholic Education Association and Stand for Children, which the Louisiana component received $1 million in Louisiana. And all those numbers are on the Bill Gates website. The department awarded $350 million to develop tests for the Common Core, which are now in development. Second error, the Common Core state standards violate what we know about how children develop and grow. No experts on early childhood were included in the drafting or internal review of the standards. In fact, more than 500 experts signed the Joint Statement of Early Childhood Health and Ed Professionals explaining why the Common Core was inappropriate for young children. Error 3, the Common Core is inspired by a vision of market-driven innovation enabled by standardization of curriculum, tests, and ultimately our children themselves. There are two goals intertwined. The first is to create a system where learned outcomes are measurable and students and their teachers can be efficiently compared and ranked on a statewide and national basis. The second is to use standardization to create a national market for curriculum and tests. The overriding goal of the Common Core and the associated tests seems to be to create a national marketplace for products. Error 4, the Common Core creates a rigid set of performance expectations for every grade level and results in tightly controlled instructional timelines and curriculum. At the heart of the Common Core is standardization. Every student, without exception, is expected to reach the same benchmarks at every grade level. Educators know better than this. Children develop at different rates, and we do far more harm than good when we begin labeling them behind at an early age. Error 5, the Common Core was designed to be implemented through an expanding regime of high-stakes tests, which will consume an unhealthy amount of time and money. Error 6, proficiency rates on the new Common Core tests have been dramatically lower by design. Only 31% of students who took Common Core tests in New York last spring were rated proficient, in other words, passed. North Carolina announced a similar drop in proficiency rates. Thus, we have a system that, in the name of rigor, will deepen the achievement gaps and condemn more students in schools as failures. That, my friends, is the justification for privatization of our public system of education via the closing of locally controlled, democratically elected school boards and the replacement with autonomous charters run by for-profit management companies. Error 7, Common Core relies on a narrow conception of the purpose of K-12 education as career and college readiness. Preparation for the workforce is the mantra of the Common Core. This runs against the grain of the historic purpose of public education, which is to prepare citizens for our democracy with the knowledge and skills to live fruitful lives and improve our society. Error 8, the Common Core is associated with an attempt to collect more student and teacher data than ever before. Parents are rightfully alarmed at the massive collection of their children's private data. Error 9, the Common Core is not based on external evidence, has no research to support it, has never been tested or piloted, and worst of all, has no mechanism for correction. Common Core is copyrighted. They must be adopted as written. Error 10, the last one, the biggest problem of American education and American society is the growing number of children living in poverty. The Common Core does nothing to address this problem, but is in fact diverting scarce resources and time into more tests, more technology for the purpose of testing, and into ever more test preparation. There is a thoroughly researched correlation between socioeconomic status and test scores. Standardization, my last word. Common Core standards, standardized curriculum, standardized testing, standardized teacher evaluations, lesson plan standards, standards for presentation, standards for licensing, hiring, firing, paying, and guess what? All of this standardization translates into the standardization of our children and of society itself. Could it be that standardization is another vehicle for segregation, gender bias, socioeconomic division, height, weight, physical ability, special needs, weight? That's getting scarily like the eugenics of days past. Seems to me that all this standardization speaks to an extrinsic focus on performance and motivation rather than an intrinsic value of self-determination that we as teachers and parents try to facilitate for our children. Public ed is a system that must serve every child that walks through the door, regardless of their abilities, motivation, socioeconomic status. We can't use high-stakes standardized tests to punish children's teachers or schools. Thank you.
I neglected to mention that Lee represents Save Our Schools organization. Next is Stephanie DeSalle of the Council for a Better Louisiana. Stephanie? Let me get this.
All right.
Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm not going to try to refute some of the things that were just said, which I find completely unfounded, and there's a lot of research that you can, if you're really interested in this topic, you can go and check it out and that kind of thing. I do want to talk for a second about cable. Can you hear me now? A little bit better? A little bit louder. We are a 50-plus year public policy, nonpartisan, non-public organization that only exists. We take no government money. We're completely independent, no political money, and we only exist for the betterment of our state. We're sincerely interested in moving forward Louisiana on economic issues, education issues, ethics in government, financial policy in government, and so forth. We've done a lot of research on this topic. Not only have we done a lot of research, we've spent a tremendous amount of time talking to educators, superintendents, principals, instructional specialists, and curriculum specialists around the state. We really believe in having a lot of feedback when you're facing something this new, this big of a shift in education, and this big of a challenge. But the fact of the matter is, the reason why we support these higher standards in Louisiana, along with the other 44 states in the nation that have adopted these standards, I don't think anybody in this room, and I can certainly refute anybody who would say otherwise, that we are in any way, our kids, achieving at levels that most of the rest of the nation is achieving. And you can go on our website, cable.org. We keep an online state-level report card on all sorts of indicators, whether it's ACT, whether it's our LEAP test, whether it's the national NAEP test, how our kids do on AP courses and tests, you name it, dropout rates, how well we're keeping our kids in school, so on and so forth. Even though in the last 14 years, under the system of accountability and LEAP testing, Louisiana has made some progress. We really have. And that's kudos to educators that have worked very hard, because believe me, 14 years ago, had you seen the results, they were abysmal. We've made some progress. The problem is that Louisiana's minimum acceptable standards for what our kids should know in order to be very strong graduates when they leave school, so they can prepare for the job of their dream, the careers of their dreams, to go to college if they wish. Our standards are just not up to par. We have huge gaps with the rest of the nation. Significant gaps with other states and the rest of the nation. The latest national assessment is called NAEP, just came out in the last week. We were ranked 47th. And while you may have some people who might disparage testing and all this stuff, the fact of the matter is all the other states have the same issues we do. This is relative. This is relative. In addition to that, our economy has been changing in this country, in the world. We need to give our kids the skills, the knowledge, the tools, the ability to grow from there, to give them the most that they can get, so that they can have the great choices and have the great jobs that they want. Louisiana has a lot of social problems. I don't think that having less educated people, lower standards, are going to produce the citizenry we need to solve those issues in the future. It's not. We're not. We need the best. We need the most educated. We have, I do want to say this too about implementation. This is a huge shift, as I said earlier. There's going to be a lot of challenges. Some teachers are much 2 nights ago on a local broadcast, there was a local teacher, and she had the cameras in her classroom, and she was talking about, I think her words were, quote, "I'm blown away," unquote, about the level of advanced achievement her kids were making, that her expectations were high with Common Core standards, but that her students were meeting them. And she was very excited. I keep hearing this over and over again from educators across the state. And I've talked to a number of them, principals as well, superintendents as well. Is it difficult? Of course it is. This is huge change. It's not easy. Are some schools and teachers better prepared than others? Yes. But it's a shared responsibility with the state and the local government. There's a lot of blame game going on. There's a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of hogwash, to be honest with you. But when you really get down to it, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of change. Probably our state and our local districts have not done as good a job as they could. We have a lot of improvement to make to help our schools meet these new challenges. It's very difficult. Lastly, I want to say, and I'd be glad to take any questions later, you'll be hearing in the next few days in the news some announcements about how do you hold people accountable during this time of transition. This is very important. Do you want to make students look like they're doing, worse than they were? Schools doing worse than they were? Of course not. So there's a lot of thinking and effort right now going on at all levels to make sure that we kind of grade on a curve, if you will, and allow the schools the time to catch their students up and get really more comfortable with this before we begin to set a bar about what we actually expect them, how we expect them to perform. Lastly, I want to just pose this question to you as an audience. Do we really in Louisiana want to be left out of this? Do we really want to be behind the rest of the nation on this? This effort will present, I'm not saying it's going to be all perfect and easy. There's going to be adjustments. They're already learning a lot. They're making these changes as they go along. But do we really want our kids and our teachers to not take advantage of everything that we're learning and doing and is happening with these higher expectations, more clear and consistent standards for kids to help them prepare better for when they graduate? Do we really want a state that's 47 out of 50 in the country to be left out of this huge effort? No, there's too many advantages and benefits from it. Our teachers deserve all that, and our kids deserve all that. And thank you. I'll be glad to answer any questions later. Thank you.
On each of your tables, you will find a stack of index cards. If you have any questions, write them out and take them over to the press. John, you going to pick them up? Okay, he can pick them up and he will take it over to the press table. Some people got the impression in some of the controversial meetings, because the questions tended to lean one direction, that it indicated a position from this organization. We are taking no position. We are simply here. This is not an advocacy forum. This is a forum to help empower citizens through knowledge. So if you have questions, please raise your hand at any time, and John will pick them up and take them to the press table. And after everyone has spoken, then we will have the questions from the audience. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mercedes Schneider, who is a education blogger. She is currently a high school teacher. She's got frontline experience, and she is also a researcher. Would you welcome Stephanie? Not Stephanie, I'm sorry. Mercedes Schneider. Thank you.
Well, there's a lot that I could say, and I have 7 minutes. So I think I'm going to start with an analogy for you. You've heard about the standards, and perhaps you have some idea about what they are. I first heard about them in 2010, and I was told that we had adopted standards and that they weren't finished yet. And we were shown a very nice PowerPoint that said nothing, but that these standards were coming, and they were going to be great standards because there were fewer of them, and they were really going to narrow things down for us. But let me tell you what the standards are like for me. Let's just say that someone has decided that there is a crisis in the health of Americans. Americans aren't as healthy. We're not keeping up with other nations. We are a nation at risk. And so let's say that someone starts a company or a nonprofit that specializes in addressing this health issue and looks for a solution and discovers that there is a solution in making a certain outfit to fit the person who has a stature, who fits the research for the person who is ideally healthy. Okay, we've got that so far. And let's say that this person gathers other people, not the people who are on the ground, but people who are in boardrooms, not classrooms predominantly, and they have lots of ideas, and perhaps they were in classrooms at one time, but now they are in boardrooms. And so they decide that based on research, because really we have to throw that word around, based on research, the ideal stature of a person who is most likely to be healthy is a certain way, and so now we're going to design an outfit to fit that stature, to fit that physique. And that's our solution. We are going to tell everyone that in order to be healthy, you have to fit this outfit. Because we know, based on research, if you fit this outfit, then you're healthy. The problem with that, of course, is that people won't readily fit a ready-made outfit that's given to them. Now, some will automatically fit. And some will fit if they make minor changes. But many will be too tall or too big, and some of them, if they try to get into the outfit, it's going to be really painful and very difficult. And so those who are in charge of coaching, let's say, the people who need to fit this outfit, have concerns, and they raise these concerns to those promoting the outfit as evidence of health and are told, you cannot change the outfit. The outfit is based on research, and the outfit is going to make us internationally competitive, and it's going to solve the problem. So the outfit is there, and if you say anything against the outfit, that means simply that you're lazy or whatever. By the way, we're going to test you. We're going to test you and your ability to get your people to fit into this outfit. Your job is on the line, so make it work. And so then there's unrest from the people who are at the bottom, who are trying to fit the outfit, who are being told, even though they've got years experience in what they're doing on the ground, that you just have to make this work. They have to make decisions about, okay, well, what do I do? Do I force the outfit? I'm told I can't change the outfit, but I'm told I can accessorize the outfit. I can't change it because it just is what it is. Now, 2 people signed and agreed that this outfit is the solution. So those who are coaching have to decide, do I force people to fit the outfit, or do I adjust, or do I just take the hit? Now, I have 2 minutes. Is that my 2-minute warning? 3-minute warning. Okay. I want to do this right. As a classroom teacher, let me just jump over to reality. No standard is going to be the solution. I don't care where it comes from, because in the end, there has to be a connection between the student and the standard. And as a classroom teacher, I've been teaching for a couple decades, I've never put a standard ahead of the student. And you might say, ooh, well, you know, you're just trying not to keep standards. Not true. I always have to begin where the students are and move them up. That's just how it is. Now, with the Common Core standards, these were given to me in top-down fashion, and I'm not allowed to alter them. But I will be, my job is on the line, and my students are on the line for how well we fit these standards that are supposed to be magic. So what I've decided to do is teach my students to start where they're from, to not give them any pressure about some standard that my job is based on for some high-stakes test. That, by the way, PARCC, which is who we're under, they're going to pilot their tests in February of next year. They're piloting them, so they're not even done. So all of this pressure, as a teacher and a good teacher, I have to decide what I'm going to choose, and I choose the students. And so does my district. I have on each of the tables a resolution by St. Tammany Parish to opt out of Common Core. We already had good standards. We decided when we were asked that we didn't want to be a part of Common Core, but as you already heard, only the governor and the state superintendent had to sign on to the document document to accept it. Our superintendent and our union president also signed, and at the bottom of those papers that really lay out the why St. Tammany Parish is addressed to my blog. And if you go on my blog and you read under the section of Common Core, I have written like research papers, I take different documents, including the document that the states had to sign as part of Race to the Top funding, the Memorandum of Understanding for Common Core, also the licensure agreement with Common Core. I have those documents. You can read them. I pick them apart and analyze them, and I link back to the original for you to see it. I am not against advancement, and I'm not against encouraging my students, but if it comes down to them and Common Core, it's going to be them. Thank you.
Okay, and our final presenter is going to be Mr. Wiley Brazier. Brazier. I'm going to get that straight yet. Wiley Brazier V. He is an educator. He is a leader, a parent, and he represents Stand for Children. Wiley?
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. This is my first time coming to do speak out for Common Core. My name is Wiley Brazier. Said I've been in education for about, this is my 13th year in education, and I have worked with a variety of students. I've worked with students who are severely at risk, low functioning, and I have previously been able to make significant double-digit gains with those students. I'm sure that everyone here would agree that all students can learn with the right motivation. And I do like what Miss, I don't know her name, what's her name?
Barrios.
What both of them said regarding students and the connections. One thing that I would say differently would be that regarding connections to, as opposed to having a connection to the standard, I think it would be more about having a connection to the teacher in those classrooms, because the most important factor for student learning is going to always be the teacher in that classroom. Now, when we talk about the standards, I do want to address a couple of things that she mentioned, both of them mentioned earlier. We talk about the way that the development process, I think she mentioned, people who were a part of this development were chief state school officers. You know, all of these people had to be teachers before they came, just like myself. I'm an administrator now, so I had to teach before I became an administrator. So I have the background there. And when we talk about violating the growth of children and the way, yes, you know, this health analogy, when we're talking about the uniform, suit, and everything, that everyone has to be made to fit a certain uniform, I don't think that analogy really does it justice. I think the overall goal should be that students should be moving forward. And you have to use this particular picture of health as a way to develop your own personal definition of what your particular health is, because I have a different body type from Stephanie and Jean. But if we have an overall picture of what health is, then the varying body types will be able to be defined by those individuals. So if we have a standard here, when we look at ourselves in Louisiana here, okay? Louisiana, as was stated earlier, we're ranked 47th out of 50 states here. But when we look at in the world, the United States is ranked 17th in the world. But then when we look down at our various districts, even in the nation, we're at the bottom of the middle. When we look at the parishes, East Baton Rouge Parish and a variety of other parishes, we are not at the top. We are making progress, but we are about number 15 currently in the state. So our standards are still low. So when we look at the standards for LEAP, let's take those LEAP standards for instance, okay? Our students rank 75, most of our students score 75% proficient. But when you compare those to those released by the NAEP, the National Association of Education Progress, with those our same students only rank at a 20%. Common Core state standards, to me personally, is all about making sure that the United States as a whole, and we in Louisiana, and then us, our children are able to compete globally. Okay, we talk about China, Finland, and all of these different countries and where they are and where we used to be. I think it's more about bringing our students back to being able to be competitive for the demanding jobs that really may not even exist yet. You know, we're preparing students for jobs that don't exist. We're preparing them for a society where we're, you know, used to be about this recall, recite, and recollect, where we were preparing students to be in these jobs that had these managers that kind of told them what to do. They were doing these industrial type jobs, but now it has changed. The whole type of jobs that we are preparing them for now is more, we need to be helping students to think, make, and create, be able to connect globally and utilize that information to be able to create something new. Because as we move forward further into the 21st century here, those are the types of jobs that we are going to have to prepare our students to do, solve these problems of the future regarding energy and a variety of other sources. When we talk about, I think she mentioned earlier, regarding the growing number of children in poverty and how this is diverting money and things of that nature. And when we look at, I grew up in poverty. Okay, I came from a single parent household. You know, my mother raised 4 kids on $13,000 a year. Okay, and when we look at that, as we are comparing this to our students, Common Core does not state a specific curriculum. Even Louisiana, right now, we don't have a state-adopted textbook specifically for math or specifically for English. You know, it is up to it gives the autonomy back to the classrooms and to those classroom teachers, where they are now able to choose what curriculum, what textbook they want to use in order to get these standards, or in order for students to achieve these concepts. Okay, it's more about the concepts and the students' understanding as opposed to just the standards. We need to be able to help them to truly internalize and master the concepts that they need to know. That's my time. In order to master the concepts that they need to know to be successful in college and in the careers. Thank you.
Well, now that you've absorbed what our presenters have to offer today, write your questions out, take them over to the press table. I'd like to recognize that Gannett newspaper is here covering the story. Okay, thank you, Mike. And Mike has the passel of questions. I am going to throw one out from the organization, although I think Wiley kind of sort of answered it a minute ago. But because poverty is such a significant factor, okay, what proponents and the opponents, what is being done about eliminating this barrier to education, and why so many of our children are failing, and the reason why we have failing schools? And if you, thank you, and if you were to say that we have D schools, we also have parents who aren't there, or parents who are druggies. There are major problems that children may or may not be appearing in school every day. So as part of the education component, what is being done to address those problems and to bring parents back into the school system. Through integration, we push the parents out, okay? Because education knew best. It's time to bring the parents back in. So, opponents and proponents, please. And since you all had the final word, I guess we'll start with you. Because we'll go back and give them the final word this time. Okay? Stephanie?
I'm not sure I understood what the question was, but a couple of things. These are minimum benchmarks. They're not materials, literature, text, CDs, or anything. That's for the schools, the teachers, and the districts to decide. So one size fits all, that's no. These are things that should be achievable for our students. Why is that important to poverty and the economy? Until more of our kids in Louisiana can be on a stronger grade level of knowledge and skills, they themselves can't access the American dream. I mean, in Louisiana right now, we still have over 250,000 children who are not even reaching Louisiana's basic minimum grade level of knowledge in schools. We need to help these kids get further along. We're not talking Harvard. We're talking preventing failure, regardless of the fact that you call their parents druggies, or whatever the child comes into the school with. The best thing I have ever heard from educators is that once the child comes through the door, that the kids are their responsibility and they're going to do the best they can, have the highest expectations, pull in all strategies and techniques that are appropriate and applicable, and help these kids at least get to a appropriate grade level and graduate from school. So these standards are benchmarks. They're not the how-to. They're not the how-to. And by the way, if you're in an advanced school or advanced district, like St. Tammany has been in the past, there is nothing stopping teachers in those classrooms from using the most advanced materials out there that they can. And they have a history of doing so. There's nothing to stop them. These are minimum benchmarks that every kid should have when they finish high school. That is all. Poverty in this state will turn around when we get more of these kids at these higher levels so that they can choose good job training. Do y'all know Louisiana has one of the most diverse and dynamic economies in the country? Yes. We're not like Iowa. We have to build ships here. We have literature, artists, and musicians here. We have engineers. We have bioscience. We're about to build a 800-job software design company here in downtown Baton Rouge. On and on. The energy sector, the chemical sector, the engineering.
Agriculture.
Agricultural science. It's actually a science. And that's why the head of IBM and the head of Exxon have both said they strongly endorse schools adopting and integrating these benchmarks for their kids. And there's nothing stopping our schools from doing even more for Louisiana kids, because we would like to know that our kids are offered every opportunity. Thank you.
All right, and now from the opponents, Mercedes is going to answer.
I do come from St. Tammany, and I believe our free and reduced lunch is right around the halfway point, 46 to 50%, so we're doing pretty well. But I have students. I had one student in the last few weeks. For 3 weeks, I paid for her lunch because she was coming to school and she said, I can't get the paperwork filled out for the free lunch form. There was some problem at home with getting the parents to fill it out. So we sat down in a few sessions so that I could get the information out of her and send the paper home. Okay, now ask this person this. And I paid for her lunch. Last year I had a student raise her hand in class and she said, I don't mean to not do work, but I haven't eaten and I'm really hungry right now. I don't have any money. And so I went and bought her lunch. I take students' book bags home and I sew them. I've taken clothes home to launder them. I've paid out of my pocket for extracurricular activities for children who were clearly being ostracized because they couldn't.
Do it on a broader scale.
I can only do my classroom, but I'll go a little broader because our school this year started a group for kids who are homeless to help us identify the children that we have in St. Tammany Parish, in my school, who are homeless, who are living transient lives, who don't know where they're going to stay at night. I've had some of them come to me, I don't have my book bag because I stayed at this person's house and I won't be there again for another week. And so these things, how do I address them? We go on case-by-case basis. So I don't want you to get the wrong idea that just because St. Tammany is doing so well and does have great standards, that we aren't facing issues of poverty and having to combat those. A quick word about textbooks. I do not get to choose my textbooks. Okay? That is a district decision. The district was pushed into a frenzy this year because we were told we were going to have an extra year before Common Core was fully implemented. John White decided over the summer, no, we're going to do it this year. And so our curricular people have been in a tizzy trying to figure out what to do, and we are literally going by unit to find out what we're teaching next.
Okay, from the audience, I have a question for Stephanie DeSalle. You'll have to excuse me. I don't think my arms are long enough. Some teachers decry the absence of a prescribed methodology for applying standards in the classroom. How does Common Core provide for the individual approaches? There it is. Approaches that address varying need of students. Why is... I'll let you read the bottom one. Come on, Stephanie, it's your question. It's for you.
I can't read it, but...
I'll decipher it while you start with the first one.
I'm not sure that, probably Wiley and somebody who's been a teacher can probably address that more, because you're talking about getting down to the actual teaching techniques, and I can't speak to that. But I do know this. It does allow for great flexibility for teachers. Again, the how is at the school level. It's at the teacher level. It's at the district level. And should there be a shared responsibility with the state to have some suggestions and recommendations to voluntarily use, excuse me, especially with students who may have special needs or advanced students or what have you? Yes, they can provide some resources and let them voluntarily adopt what they find is necessary. But every teacher, I can only tell you what the teachers and the principals and superintendents are telling me. They're telling me it absolutely allows them to do this because it allows them the flexibility to do so. That doesn't mean, though, that there might be some teachers and schools in our state, and I know there are, who need more guidance. And I think that's going to be that's our real challenge to me, not all this other stuff. And by the way, you can go online and see the dozens and dozens and dozens of educators who are involved in developing these standards. And by the way, Bessie did have to vote in public to adopt these. This was not some secret. But anyway, as far as classroom, I invite you to talk to teachers who are trying to adapt these to their classrooms. Of course, they have some challenges. It's going to be a learning curve. And what we need to figure out in our state is how best to do it, how to find the right resources, and let talented people help other people get to where they need to be. That's what we really need to do. Thank you.
Okay. Lee, I think you said you want to rebuttal.
Well, I just want to contribute to the answer, and I'm a retired teacher, by the way. I retired 2 years ago. The problem is that the standards are attached to a high-stakes standardized test at the end. So to offer up a set of standards without the test, or without knowledge of the test never having, well, first of all, it hasn't been written, but never having been given before, the teacher has got to create a curriculum that's going to bridge that gap. According to the National Research Council, who is the advisor for the U.S. Department of Ed, and this policy is published on the U.S. Ed website, for a standardized test to be reliable and valid for the purpose that it's intended, which in this case is high stakes. It will determine if the student fails. It will determine if the teacher is fired. It will determine if the school fails and nowadays is closed and turned to a charter. For it to be valid and reliable, it has to be aligned with the curriculum. There is no curriculum. Now, John White, in his waiver, which he acquired from the U.S. Department of Ed, stated a couple of things, and one of those was that the state was going to provide a Common Core aligned curriculum this year. He pulled back. He reneged on that. He did not do it. So that's why the scramble at the beginning of the year for parishes to write their own curriculum. Thank you.
The second question, and that you can incorporate your remarks in this, okay? Why are teachers against Common Core? Okay, Wiley, you're the educator on your team.
Okay.
Okay.
They're going to go first this time.
You're making an assumption that educators
well, no, okay.
are against Common Core.
All right.
I am an educator and I am against it, so I'll go with that.
You're one. Yep, that's true.
Common Core started in the wrong direction. It should have emerged from those who have the highest stakes and the most to lose. It should have emerged from teachers and gone upward. Instead, it started upward and came down. If you read my piece on the Common Core Memorandum of Understanding, that's the contract. Yes, teachers were involved, and I'm putting that in quotes because there were three groups. The third group is a work group where teachers, the national unions could give input on Common Core. Those in that contract who are called the developers of the Common Core are with Achieve, which is a nonprofit. They are with Student Achievement Partners, which is a company. They are with College Board, and they are with ACT. Those are the ones who developed. Next level, the validation committee. Those are supposed to be the expert standard writers, but they were not the developers. They were to advise on the drafts of the standards. So this did not come from us. This was given to us. We are not allowed to alter it. My job is on the line with these assessments that have not yet been written, and I promise you I will go down teaching students, and I will take them from where they are, and I will raise them as best I can. I will not subjugate them to a standard because I'm supposed to teach a standard and do what's being done to me and teach downward. Thank you.
Okay, who's going to speak on this side? Wiley?
Okay, when we talk about teachers being against Common Core, if you talk to the overwhelming majority of teachers, it's going to be the...
Speaking to the mic, it's not carrying.
Okay, the majority of teachers are for great standards, okay? Now, nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect. If it were up to me, hey, you know, I would say let's implement the standards beginning just like how they do for high school students when they enter 9th grade. You know, we just changed over to Core 4. So all students who enter 9th grade at this particular year, okay, now you're on Core 4, okay, and you have to opt out. If it were up to me, I would say, hey, all kindergarten students who are entering in this particular year, they'll now be on Common Core state standards, and every year subsequently. That way it could be done logically like that. But that is not what's happening here, okay? We need to make sure that first off here, teachers, okay, so when you talk about standards though, who in here would say that it's not good to have good standards or high standards? When we think about our own personal kids, even in their behavior, we have to have a certain expectation and a certain standard of what is acceptable and what is unacceptable for how students to behave. it's very similar for education. The previous question talked about the individualization, and I think some of the frustration from the teachers who oppose the Common Core state standards may feel as though that they're being made to do a certain thing. Okay, there is still individualization there, because in all classrooms we have low performing students, we have your average students, and we have high performing students. Those of you who are educators, would you agree with that? In every classroom, okay? You have your low performing students, there are those that are average, and we have those high performing students in every classroom. So regardless, with the GLEs, we had to individualize and what they call differentiate our instruction to make sure that all students grow. I believe that the Common Core state standards are very similar here. Teachers still have that autonomy to individualize that instruction for the variety of types of learners, the levels of learners. And earlier I mentioned that the state does not have any state-adopted textbooks for these particular standards. It is still left up to teachers in classrooms and districts. Districts do provide support. There are some curricula that is out there. But when we talk about the particular classroom teachers, once again, the most important part of a learning for a child is going to be that classroom teacher. And if the teacher can go out there and pull whatever types of resources that are available to them to help the students to achieve those standards, that is what is going to be the most important factor to whether that child grows in that particular classroom or not.
Okay, next question is going to come from the organization. Okay, the organization asks, are we teaching our children to think or pass tests? Ever since the LEAP test, and I also want to know, is Common Core, are the charter schools, is everybody playing on a level playing field that every student has to take the LEAP test? I know they do in public schools. I don't know what they're doing in the charter schools where Common Core is being implemented. But I do want to know, like I said, organizational question. Are we teaching our children to think or to pass tests? And Lee?
Again, the thing that's going to drive that is going to be a high-stakes test at the end. Teachers, of course, it's their job to teach critical thinking skills, regardless of what the standard is, what the text is, what the literature is, or the math. It's up to the teacher to develop the depth and the critical thinking that goes along with that standard. Standards don't provide that. They're a benchmark, a level, okay, a standard. Lost my train of thought on, what was your question? One more time.
Are we teaching to the test, or are we just teaching test papers?
The problem with the standardized test is a single standardized test, same test for every student, is that it's attempting to measure quality when it can only measure quantity. It's a measurement in quantitative terms, a number, a grade. It cannot measure quality. So regardless of whether a student does develop critical skills or not, their success on that test is going to be purely determined by how many questions they answer correctly. I taught gifted students, 7th grade gifted. It was amazing to me that I had students, language arts, who took the Duke University sponsored ACT or SAT test in 7th grade every year, some of whom would score way beyond high school and be awarded scholarships by Duke. And yet when they took the 7th grade LEAP test, they did not all make mastery on that test. Some of my best students, my critical thinkers, did worse on the test than some of my poorer students. And that's because the way a standardized test has got to be designed. Thank you.
Okay, who's going to answer from the proponent's side? Remember the question?
Tell me the question one more time.
The question is, are you teaching to the test? Are you teaching them to think? And do all students in Louisiana have to take the standardized LEAP to be professionals? Why are we saying it's supposed to be? They are professionals. Okay? Why were classroom teachers not allowed to help write the standards? Would we do this to doctors and lawyers? And the second part of it is, why was Common Core implemented before the guidelines were developed, the specific guidelines were developed? And why were our teachers held so rigorously accountable for something that is still a work in progress? See,
You can go with them first.
Huh?
You want to go with them first?
No, it's y'all's turn to go first. Pick a speaker.
I know there were zillions of committees at the national level that helped develop the standards and all those kind of things. You can easily go on the web. You can go to the Chief State Schools Officer and look for yourselves about the kind of people who helped develop, review, vet, whatever these standards. And by the way, to think otherwise, you'd have to think that there are perhaps tens of thousands of people in league and a conspiracy to somehow develop something that tens of thousands of educators are involved and engaged and I have a list here. They're from almost every state in the nation. And by the way, Louisiana had 3 people on some of this development stuff, very highly respected people, and actually contributed a great deal to the development of these standards. In addition to that, LSU, at the Kane Center at LSU, has developed one of the strongest math curricula now, considered one of the strongest, best, high quality in the country. And it has been made available free to all school districts in the nation. And I think that's something we can be very proud of. But no, there's no conspiracy of non-educators that I'm aware of that have been involved and engaged in this. It's been a massive number of people across the country.
Okay. The opponents?
It's true, you can go on the CommonCoreStandards.org, I believe is the name of the website, and learn everything you want to know about Common Core standards. Some of it is going to be rhetoric, but they do list the names and the backgrounds of the people that were on the committees, and they were not K through 12 educators, and you can see that. To throw the term conspiracy out there to get people to turn off people, what is a conspiracy? An orchestrated agenda to carry out something. If you want to call that a conspiracy, call it a conspiracy. But there is definitely an organized move, because this is a national phenomenon that's taking place. And you can say that the majority of teachers support the Common Core, but that wouldn't be true, and I have yet to see anybody come up with numbers, but there's a pushback from every state on the Common Core. A number have dropped out of PARCC, the test. A number have legislation entered to drop out of Common Core altogether. And because it has been made a political issue, in other words, our governor, for instance, signed on to that, and his appointee, Paul Pastrick, signed on to that, it has to go to, and our legislature was led, Representative John Schroeder from St. Tammany actually wrote the Common Core legislation. It's legislated. So you could say all you want, the teachers have a choice, that teachers can individualize the teaching. You could say that all you want. It's been pushed on teachers, and they don't like having something, first of all, that they're not even aware of the test, and something that they cannot make adjustments to because of the end result, the high stakes test.
Okay, who's answering from the proponent side? You've already did. I'm sorry, I was lost track. All right, Bridget, you said you'd like to add a few facts and ask a question. Yes. Stand up, please. And here, hey, come on. Come up here and face the camera.
Oh, my goodness.
Face the camera.
Okay.
No, here. Bridget, Bridget, we need you here.
She needs a pen.
Oh, she needs.
Well, I was taking notes. I was actually listening. The first thing was that a couple people have mentioned already that I just want to make clear that if you're not an educator, you don't understand that there's a difference between standards and curriculum. And we're talking a lot about standards and a little bit about curriculum, and it seems like all the pushback's coming from what they think the curriculum will be or what their curriculum will be, not the standards. So the standards are like the overarching goal, and the curriculum is kind of like the roadmap to achieve that goal. The other thing that seems to be getting convoluted here is high-stakes tests are here whether the Common Core is alive and well or not. And I completely agree with standardized tests. I have zero appreciation for them, except for the STEM.
Face the camera, please.
You're on film.
You're on film.
I also wanted to reinforce that it looks like the mathematics curriculum is going to come out of LSU. It's called Eureka. They're actually using it in New York right now. They call it Engage New York. And Louisiana is the lead state in the PARCC exam, the assessment. It's more Louisiana-centric than any other state, because if we get the mathematics curriculum and we also are the lead state on the assessments, that's a lot of
Question,
input.
Bridget. Go to
sorry.
your question.
So one of the things
This is why we don't give out mics.
Okay. My question is specifically about the comment of developmentally inappropriate and kids being labeled behind. And I've seen this argument in lots and lots of different places, and anyone in here in education knows about Piaget, and he's always the one that's quoted, and this is why it's inappropriate, this is what Piaget says about it. He's an educational philosopher at the end of the day. But my question is, I'm reviewing the TIMSS test, which our national rankings are based on two tests, the PISA and the TIMSS. The PISA is out of the Department of Education. It's a knowledge-based test. The TIMSS is administered through the University of Boston, and it's an application of knowledge, which when we talk about critical thinking and what we want for our kids, we're really talking about the application of knowledge. So if it is a developmental issue, then why is it that kids from other countries, so many kids from so many other countries, can reach these standards? Because developmental to me is a human argument, not a country-specific argument. And that's my question.
Thank you. Okay. You all start first this time?
Yeah, they started.
They started, so you're first. No.
Developmentally appropriate, it's going to be different. That you have to first understand that with the standards, let's talk standards, that these are K through 12. Now they want, the proponents of Common Core are going for P through 20, and I don't even quite know what 20 is except 20 years old. I know Common Core has infiltrated the higher ed arena, but developmentally appropriate, you have standards in math and English for different grade levels, and so there's going to be quite a variety of what's being asked of students at these different levels. And frankly, my experience is that the standards are really problematic, particularly problematic in mathematics for kids in elementary and middle school. Why kids can seem to do well on international tests? The United States doesn't do well on international tests, and yet we're a world power. So that right there says something about international tests. Go look at the history of how the United States scores on international tests. We're pretty low on scoring on international tests. We just don't do well at it. Developmentally appropriate practice, I don't think that you can answer a question internationally just because kids are scoring well on tests. That must mean that the practice is developmentally appropriate. I have a Chinese exchange student right now who just did a guest post on my blog, and he said that when he's at home, he likes American school, by the way, because when he's at home, he goes to school, it looks like 12, 13 hours a day. There is no transportation. He has to ride his bicycle. Classes, 10, 40-minute classes, and then one to polish off the day, a 4-hour class, and that there's an article I'll link to there where the Chinese press actually laments the loss of childhood for these students. They score very well on tests, by the way. So just because kids can score well on tests and are scoring well, that doesn't mean that what they're experiencing is developmentally appropriate. So I don't think that there can be a connection there. Thank you.
One of you?
When we talk about the United States and us being a superpower, is this mic on? Can you?
It might have gone.
When we're talking about the United States and us being a superpower and the history, yes, you know, in years past, the United States, and yes, we are a superpower. You know, we are the world's leader in a variety of areas. I'll hold it. But when we talk about the history of testing, yes, in years past we have been #1. And if you look at that history, we were #1 on these same tests. But now our ratings have fallen. When we look at our dollar, our monetary system, our dollar does not, we have a euro that is worth more than our dollar. So it's all about making sure that we are and we remain competitive globally. Thank you.
I don't know, Emma.
Not really.
Uh-oh.
Okay. All right. Let's try. We have I'm combining two because I'm trying to get to everybody's questions, and I'm not allowing rebuttals yet, but we are going to give each person here a chance to close out. Would that be fair enough, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. All right. Even assuming standardized testing is a good method for evaluating students and teachers, and according to this person, which is dubious at best.
I don't think you're coming through.
Now, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
There we go.
There, okay. Even assuming that standardized testing is a good method of evaluating students and teachers, which in parentheses is dubious at best, how can it be fair to students and teachers this year when the state failed to provide teachers with this training and support? Whoever wrote this, please stand up and say what the rest of it was. That they were originally promised, and while the usage, a value-added model to evaluate teachers, which is, you asked the question? Okay, I can't read your handwriting. Albert?
I can tell you what it is.
Oh, can we do it this way? How do we empower teachers by not supplying them with a planned curriculum and the tools?
Okay. Basically what I asked was that even if we assume that standardized tests are a good measure, a good way of evaluating teachers and students, which I believe is a problem in itself. But let's just set that aside for a second. How is it fair for us to rush ahead and use this year when A, the state promised and then reneged on its promise to provide teachers with the training and the resource they would need, and then two, we're implementing this at the same time with a value-added model for evaluating teachers that has an error rate of 30% at least. So how is it fair for us to go forward with this when we didn't give teachers the support that we promised, and we're using a method that's flawed for evaluating them?
Okay. Wiley?
Can I use that mic? That mic is like it.
She's like, oh, that mic.
Some people need to read the press release that came out today. State superintendent.
Yeah.
Because that's addressed.
Jean, Lee's going to talk about the press.
Okay.
For one, we have the Department of Education has provided a variety of supports. If you go online to LouisianaBelieves.com, which is the Department of Education's website, they have a classroom toolbox. They have resources for teachers, there are resources for leaders, both at the campus level and at the district level. They have provided a number of meetings to provide resources at each school. Most schools throughout the state have at least one person there that they have been selected and that the district has named for that particular school as a teacher leader to be able to help to provide these same resources that the state are providing for districts to be able to, those people are trained to go on to that site and make sure that they have that information to provide for the staff members there at the school. And hopefully at the campus level, there are some either common planning time or some professional learning communities there at the school level where that can take place. Now, as far as the state providing resources, they've provided a variety of videos. Prime example, I think someone mentioned earlier about the young lady. They had a news story on her in the classroom. And that's great. I mean, that is absolutely great. There are webinars that the state provides with real teachers who are enacting these same initiatives, the same Common Core state standards. You can contact them. I think for us, as opposed to debating whether or not this should be kept or done away with, I think it's more about us being able to collaborate with each other to see what's the best way to help achieve these standards for the students, because there are a myriad of things that we can do there. When we're talking about the concepts or the testing of it, when you test for mastery of a concept. The concept is not going to change. So whether that objective is written this way, or if a problem is given in this fashion or that fashion, the steps to solve that problem, if a student truly understands them, that will stay the same. So as long as the teachers and the school leaders can make sure that we're all collaborating and sharing best practices for what's going to work for mastery of those standards, I think that's going to be in the best interest for our children, because I'll say that the state is providing resources for them.
But not what they promised.
No, not what they promised.
Not what they promised. That's not my question. That's never what they promised.
Newsflash. Just yesterday, John White published to teachers and principals, and I subscribe to his EdConnect, so I get it also, and you can too. Press release of sorts to teachers and and he didn't state it this way, of course, but because there has been such great pushback by teachers, superintendents, and parents against the implementation of Common Core, if not Common Core itself, he has pulled back, and he has suggested, and it will be presented at the Bessie meeting in December, evidently, he has suggested that maybe it will take 10 years to slowly proceed with the standards, and 2 more years before the accountability measures are high stakes for teachers and for students. So that's a result really of 2 things. Pushback by the vast majority of the public, mostly educators, in spite of the fact that evidently most educators love the Common Core, and Lottie Beebe, a Bessie member who's also superintendent of St. Martin Parish, and her school board produced a letter and a resolution, I think about a week ago. I only read it in the last few days, against the implementation of Common Core, not against standards themselves, but Common Core, and produced the promised timeline, documented that, and then actually and the stated promises to US Ed, and what John White actually surreptitiously did in moving up the implementation of Common Core. So your voices are being heard, our voices are being heard, and some action is being taken.
Thank you. The next 2 questions lend themselves. I know we were going back and forth, but since they were directed, okay.
I'm gonna have to leave shortly anyway.
All right. Stephanie, this one's for you. Ms. Berrios listed 10 specific objections to Common Core based on research. Opponents gave vague talking points in support of Common Core standards. Can they answer any of her questions?
I mean, obviously, that's just, I don't know which teacher union planted that one, but no, I said at the beginning I wasn't going to go point by point. I don't even believe in most of her assumptions, so no, I'm not going to waste time. I will say this about the implementation. The state has, obviously, you can't have things like value-added teacher evaluation, and because the model that Louisiana has predicts it based on how the kid does over history, and since you don't have a history with these new tests and standards, you have to pause for a couple of years, and that's what they're suggesting doing. So common sense, of course, there should be common sense going forward with all of this. I'm going to have to make this my last statement because I thought we were going to, I need to really leave. I thought this was going to end at 1, but
we only have one other question, so
yeah, I'm out of here after this, but I would just say it's not true that all the things that you've heard today. Do your own research, talk to your teachers. Implementation is not going to go, there's nothing that was released today from the Department of Education, I've read it, that said they were stopping any implementation. They're not stopping implementation. They're not stopping the testing schedule. What they're saying is for accountability purposes. In other words, how are we going to view you in terms of high stakes promotional standards for children, school performance scores, teacher evaluation based on value added. Those things have to be paused. And then the bar for those things is going to begin in 2 years to be set. So we said that at the very beginning. That is a very common sense approach, but it doesn't have anything to do with the continued implementation of it, which we believe really needs to go forward for Louisiana. And thank you so much for having me here today. I appreciate it.
Stephanie, one thing I do have to say for the benefit of everyone, we address the issue, not the panelists or individuals, okay? We have one last question. If not, and this goes to Lee Barrios, if not Common Core, what is your answer to our educational problems? The status quo is certainly unacceptable. Lee?
I agree that the status quo is unacceptable. Look what's become.
What's the answer? There is no simple answer. But certainly we should look to improve education. We should look to education experts. Those are teachers who are trained, experienced, highly qualified. They studied the psychology of teaching, okay, not business. There are some things that don't carry over that you do in business that wouldn't work in education. And for one thing, the whole idea of measuring things quantitatively. You cannot measure learning quantitatively, only qualitatively. And a standardized test is a quantitative measure, how many answers you get correct on the test. So what can we do? It was stated that the teacher is the most important factor in a child's education. That's not quite accurate. The in-school factor, the teacher is the most important. But she has no control over what happens to that child 24 hours of the day, every hour that he or she is out of the classroom. Poverty has been shown, researched, and proven to be a huge factor. Not because poor kids can't learn, but because poor kids have not been exposed, kids living in poverty have not been exposed to the opportunities. Their parents typically are not highly educated because they couldn't afford to be highly educated. So that's a huge factor. That needs to be addressed outside of the classroom. Obviously, teachers are doing what they can to address it inside the classroom. We need smaller class sizes so that we can work with individual students on critical thinking skills. I taught writing. I only had, because I taught gifted, I didn't have more than 60 students a year. So we were able to write a piece every week. Well, for each piece that my students wrote, I had to analyze it and assign either a grade to it or critique it. If it only took me 10 minutes per piece, That's 50 times 10 is 500 minutes. Is that correct? I'm not a math teacher. 500 minutes a week. That's why teachers cannot teach the way we really should teach writing, which is to have students write and have their work analyzed. So we need smaller class sizes. We need for funding to be used more efficient and properly. I admit there's a lot of funding that goes wasted. Okay, we're having to pull back on that. So high-stakes standardized testing is one of the wastes. Huge waste of money. Technology is not going to cure education's ills. It's a tool. Okay? It's not the answer to education.
Wait, we gotta wrap. We gotta.
So I'll let you go at that.
Okay, Wiley? The question was, if not Common Core, what? But your answer is Common Core, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, that's not the only thing, but yeah, I mean.
Okay. Did you want us to make a comment? Last comment.
I would like to.
Yes, please.
Respond to a couple of things there. Of course, I am a supporter of Common Core. That's clear. I am a supporter of Common Core because we have to do something about the level of achievement for our students. Okay, we have to. She just made a point about the poverty and things of that nature, and I do believe that the teacher is the most important factor in a child's education there at school. We cannot control home environments. We cannot. But it is not as if parents are keeping their best children at home and sending us the ones that they don't want to deal with. They are sending their best to school each day. And yes, the research does show that, those parents who have less education, they may not have as much of a value for education, or those kids may perform at a lower level. But it is, as teachers, we do a variety of things. We have so many hats on a daily basis. We are everything from motivators. We have to be policemen. We have to be security guards, from doctors, checking. We have to be social workers, counselors, everything to a child on a daily basis when they are there. That, for me particular, is one of the most rewarding pieces about being an educator. Is because I'm able to see the growth and the change in this child, because now I see this student did not have a value for a particular content or a particular, not just content, just in general, because we have to be concerned about the holistic. We have to be concerned about the holistic child, not just their academics, okay? But even though we cannot control their home environment, we still have to make sure that, and help them to see that one true way to change whatever situation that you're in, if you're not satisfied with your home environment, to me, education is the great equalizer. That's one thing that all kids, and we all have the right for, is in education.
All right, I know I told you that we would do a wrap-up of all the speakers, but with one of them having left, we're going to preclude that. Besides, we're over time, and there's a couple of things that I have to wrap up with. And number one, Wiley, thank you. I appreciate you coming, and you are a living example of the difference between poverty of pocketbook and poverty of spirit, because the greatest problem we have with our inner city children is they don't know they can do better. Nobody ever helped them set goals. They didn't have the food and everything else. You apparently lived in poverty, but somebody inspired you, and I'll bet you it's somebody in your family somewhere, okay? And I just want to say there's a vast difference, and we have to find a way to crack the poverty of spirit, where people are just traditionally turning over in the welfare circle. But I want to remind all the members that we will be having a general meeting in December. I'm going to check on the location to see if we can have it on December the 12th, which was our founding day. I want to stress one thing. that our future topics next year would include the whole concept of St. George versus Baton Rouge, ethics in Louisiana, the environment and our sinkholes. We're hoping to get General Honore here. And the Estruma, which has got Baton Rouge in turmoil. We plan to take a look at that one. But I want to stress, we're all in this together. And one of the things that we can do is through communications. We are all Americans of some descent. We are not African Americans, Irish Americans. We're Americans first. And the sooner we get in the habit of saying Americans first, the easier it's going to be to bring us together. And with that, I remind you that it's Happy Thanksgiving, and the Indians and the Pilgrims got along, so why shouldn't we? See you next year.